My fiancée asked for a break due to a new guy, so I left and moved cities. She's now stalking me. Her parents apologized, but I refused to talk. I'm 34 years old, and I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong for refusing to speak with my ex, Sarah, who is 29. There's a lot of history here, and I'll try to explain it fully. In mid-2022, I met Sarah at work, and we hit it off right away. I soon fell for her, and we began dating shortly after. However, Sarah ended our relationship early on due to a little disagreement. To make matters worse, she caused a commotion in front of everyone at work. I was sad, but I did not want to quit my job at first. Eventually, I realized I still had feelings for her, and seeing her every day was too hard. That's when I decided to quit and look for a new job. We lived close together, so we ran into each other regularly over the next few months. We began conversing again, but despite my feelings for her, I couldn't bring myself to consider getting back together. I was terribly saddened by what she had done. After a few months, she told me she regretted ending our relationship over something so petty. She stated that doing it in front of everyone was terrible, and she had been reflecting about it ever since. She appeared sincerely sorry, and I could see she meant it. I asked if she wanted to give our relationship another chance because I believed her apologies were genuine. She consented, and by early 2023, we were formally reunited. 1 year later, everything was going well. We discussed marriage and constructing a future together, which made me feel prepared to take the next step. I decided to surprise her with a proposal and began working additional hours to pay for a house so we could get married. Not long after, I didn't tell her why I was working so hard since I wanted it to be a surprise. Then out of nowhere, she requested a break. I was taken aback, and when I questioned why, she refused to explain. Around the same time, I noticed she had been talking non-stop about a new person at her employment, but then she stopped mentioning him completely, which made me suspicious, perplexed, and hurt. I contacted one of my close friends, Emily, not her real name, who, together with her partner, continued to work at the same company as Sarah. I complained to Emily about what was going on and asked if she knew anything. She replied she didn't because she worked in a different department, but she promised to check around. Emily followed up with me a few days later. She told me Sarah had been feeling distant from me lately, especially since I was working longer hours and not getting out as often. Emily stated that some of Sarah's coworkers had encouraged her to take a break, believing I wasn't treating her well and wasn't as involved in the relationship. On top of that, they were attempting to link her with a new guy at work, claiming they'd be a better match. I told Emily about my plans to propose and purchase a home for Sarah and me. That was why I had been working so much. I wanted to surprise her with something large. Sarah called me after about 2 weeks and suggested we meet. I agreed, but I made it clear that I needed an explanation for why she wanted a break before we could talk about anything else. She mentioned how detached I had appeared, adding it made her feel like I wasn't as invested in the relationship anymore. I told her that if she had just spoken with me about it, she would have realized there was a reason for my actions, but it didn't matter anymore. She then mentioned the new guy at her employment. I said his name before she could, and she was astonished, wondering how I knew. I assured her that I was not an idiot. I noted how she abruptly stopped talking about him after constantly bringing him up. She said she'd never cheated on me. I said that hunting for someone better at the first hint of difficulties may be considered cheating by some. At that point, I informed her I did not want to hear anything else she had to say. It didn't matter if she wanted to reconcile. I was ending my relationship with her regardless. The split left me extremely hurt. I couldn't bear being in the same town, so I requested my employer for a move and used the money I'd saved for the project to start over in a new city. While speaking with Emily, the friend I had previously vented to, she apologized to me. She stated that she had made a mistake by informing Sarah about my plans to propose and purchase a home. Emily stated Sarah burst into tears after hearing that. Emily's candor was welcomed, but it did not influence the outcome. By mid-December last year, I had returned to my hometown to celebrate Christmas and New Year's with my family. Some friends wanted to throw a party to bring everyone together because many of us, including myself, had moved away and were only returning for the holidays. Sarah also received an invitation. We barely spoke that night, just a short hi in passing. I glanced at her and noticed her smiling while speaking with a group of women. That smile recalled so many memories. I realized that seeing her smile made me feel exactly the same way I felt the first time I saw it. I wondered to myself, how screwed up am I that I still feel this way? Despite those residual emotions, I was still saddened and extremely upset by the way things had ended. Looking back, I've started to resent myself. I should have paid closer attention to how she felt. I could have informed her about the additional work and why I was doing it. Perhaps things could have turned out differently. Later that evening, one of my friends revealed that Sarah's relationship with the guy at work had only lasted a few months. After the holidays, I intended to return to the city where I now dwell. My vacation ended on January 6th, so I planned to go on Friday. That way, I'd have Saturday to tidy up at home and prepare for the week ahead, and Sunday to unwind before returning to work. Before I departed, one of my buddies from home contacted me. He stated he had a favor to request on behalf of someone else and warned me that I would not like it. I could already feel my stomach dropping. He then told me it was Sarah. She was moving to the city where I live to work for a relative's company, and she needed a ride. He asked if I could take her. I didn't think about it before saying no. The thought of being locked in a car with her for hours was too much to take. It would have been excruciatingly embarrassing, just like the party, and I wasn't prepared to put myself through it. He insisted that Sarah and I talk, but I was having none of it. I returned home, and last week I went for a run. When I stopped to relax briefly at a park, I heard a familiar voice say, "Hi." It was Sarah. She attempted to start a conversation by asking how I was and emphasizing that we didn't get to converse during the party. But I cut her off, stating I didn't want to speak with her. She told me not to be like that and that we should have a chat, but I declined. She questioned how I could still dislike her after over a year and everything we'd been through, but I told her it wasn't resentment. I was quite truthful. I explained that thinking about her, talking about her, or even seeing her still hurts a lot, which is why I couldn't talk to her. She stated that this was exactly why we needed to communicate. I didn't understand the point, so I simply walked away. Sarah has tried to approach me twice since then, and both times I have turned her down. Some of my pals believe I'm being overly harsh and should talk to her for closure. Others argue that torturing her for the rest of her life is unacceptable, but that is not the point of this. I have no anger or ill thoughts against her anymore. I admit that I share some of the blame, but it still stings. I can't talk to her because it's like reopening an old wound that has never completely healed. So, Aida, why are you refusing to talk to her? After reading the comments, the original poster thanked everyone for their advice. The OP simply wants to explain things better. OP explained that their friends were not contacting or emailing them, telling them to talk to Sarah. It was simply the perspective of some of them when the matter was raised. Update, February 2nd, 2025. Hello everyone. I wanted to provide an update and appreciate everyone for their thoughts. I read over each comment, and while I didn't react to everyone, it was only because I didn't have anything to say. I'm grateful to everyone who expressed their opinions. It's been quite helpful. After reading everything and thinking about it, I've chosen to adhere to my choice not to speak to Sarah. I neglected to include it in my original post, but I did notify a few people that I blocked her everywhere after we broke up for the second time. Over the last 2 days, it appears that her insistence has backfired. Some of our shared acquaintances, including those who first suggested I talk to her, have become tired of her continuous attempts to reach me. They appear to have turned against her as a result of this. Emily, the friend I was venting to at the time, posted about stalkers on social media 3 days ago. She did not name Sarah, but many people understood what she meant. I've also seen a few comments on my initial post that suggest Sarah was stalking me. Her job in the same city, as well as her serendipitous arrival in the park, support this theory. For what it's worth, I know her uncle owns a company here, so that could be the real reason she moved, but that's not my concern, and I'm not going to investigate it. Things have been quieter. Friends have abandoned the subject, and Sarah hasn't attempted to contact them again. That was until yesterday. I watched the UFC event with some coworkers. When it ended, I was on my way to my car when my phone called. A mutual friend called. She stated she had spoken with Sarah and asked if she could relay a message. I sighed and urged her to get it done quickly. Sarah just stated that she knows why I don't want to talk to her. She vowed she wouldn't contact us again, but she still believes we should communicate. She said the door was open if I ever wanted to discuss. I told my buddy I didn't have a message to return and begged her not to bring Sarah up again in our chats. If what Sarah mentioned is correct, it is a relief, but I am not holding my breath. I wouldn't be surprised if she tried something different. Perhaps she believes that giving me space will compel me to approach her, but it will not. That chapter of my life is currently closed. I simply want to focus on myself. I doubt I will be dating anyone anytime soon. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that I should get to know individuals better before committing to a relationship. I've also been thinking about how loosely I use the term friend. That's another aspect of my life I need to reconsider. Some of the people I've called friends have shown that they don't have my best interests at heart. A couple folks mentioned therapy in the comments, and I'll confess it's something I've thought about. For the time being, I'm allowing myself to heal on my own, but if I don't feel better after a while, I'll look into it further. Thank you to everyone who took the time to remark. Your counsel has been quite helpful in sorting everything out. Update 2. February 16, 2025. Sarah has been missing for several weeks, and no one has mentioned her in discussion. That is a nice thing. Then, last Tuesday, February 11th, I received a direct message from Sarah's mother. She stated she wanted to apologize for her daughter's actions and requested me to call her. I've always had a good relationship with Sarah's parents. They are genuinely lovely individuals. Even during both breakups, they were always respectful and never went too. I didn't want to talk about Sarah anymore, but I also didn't want to avoid her mother. After considering it for a few minutes, I decided to phone her. However, if she tried to get me to communicate with Sarah or anything like, I would gently cease the call. When she responded, she put me on speaker so Sarah's father could join us. I almost expected to hear Sarah's voice, but thankfully, that did not happen. The conversation was actually very good. They began by apologizing for Sarah's recent actions. I quickly informed them there was nothing to apologize for, but they insisted, claiming it was the right thing to do. They also said that they had no idea what was going on until recently. When they found out, they called Sarah and had a lengthy conversation with her. Her father confessed that the chat was more appropriate for an adolescent than an almost 30-year-old woman. Sarah vowed that she would stay away from me and seek therapy. I felt relieved, not just for myself, but also for her. Everything that happened between us was not ideal, but I sincerely wish her the best. I hope she finds happiness. Before we hung up, I thanked her parents and expressed how much I admired and respected them. I can now state with certainty that this is over. Sarah would never violate her parents' confidence. Thank you everybody for your advice, it meant a lot. Now to the next story, Story 2. I discovered that my stepdaughter had been manipulated by her biological father into investing her tuition money in a fake startup project. Why don't you just disappear? My stepdaughter said during a fight. Her mother joined in. We'd be better off without you. I didn't say anything, I had just packed my suitcases. This morning, my phone exploded with 13 missed calls. Something seemed strange when I strolled into our living room. The house was abnormally silent, but that wasn't all. My gaze swept over the room, attempting to determine what was wrong. Then it struck me. All of our family photos looked different. I took a step closer to the enormous frame above the fireplace, which was from our trip to Yellowstone last year. The photo was present, but I wasn't. Every photo of me had been painstakingly erased, creating embarrassing gaps in family memories spanning the previous 3 years. I was standing there, my coffee cup becoming cold, when I heard Stella's upstairs door softly close. My stepdaughter's footsteps stopped at the top of the stairs. She had obviously seen I was awake. After a brief pause, she walked down, phone in hand, purposefully avoiding eye contact as she headed toward the kitchen. "Morning," I said, my tone calm. The hush that followed was thick with intention. 3 years. That was how long I'd been in Stella's life. 3 years of gradually establishing trust, of movie nights and math homework assistance, of attempting to be present without going too far. At the age of 16, she began to drift away. I expected ordinary teenage rebellion, but this seemed different. It began last week, when I offered to assist her with her chemistry project. She'd been grappling with the subject, and I figured it didn't matter what I thought. Her remark was like a slap. "Stop pretending you care about my grades. You're not my real dad." I'd heard variants of that before, but something about her tone was different, sharp and intentional. My wife, Delilah, was in the kitchen and must have heard, but she did not say anything. That quiet felt like taking sides. The tension grew over the week. Small things. Dishes left in the sink, with pointed looks. Doors close a little too harshly. Conversations halted when I entered the rooms. Delilah also became distant, avoiding my attempts to clarify what was going on. "She's just being a teenager, Thomas. Don't make it about you." But everything burst last night. Stella was texting during supper, which goes against our customary norms. When I gently reminded her, she threw down her phone. "God, why are you always policing everything I do? Why can't you just leave me alone?" "Stella," I said. "I'm just trying to..." "To what? Play dad?" "I already have one." She stood up, the chair scratching against the floor. "Why don't you just disappear? Nobody asked you to try so hard. It's pathetic." I looked at Delilah, not sure what I was expecting. Support? Mediation? Instead, she placed her fork down and calmly murmured, "Maybe we'd all be better off if you did." The words hung in the air, like smoke. 3 years of memories flew through my mind. The day Stella first laughed at one of my dad jokes, the night she called me in tears after her first boyfriend broke up with her, and Delilah's proud smile when Stella requested me, not her mother, to help her pick out her prom outfit. I stood up slowly, my food half finished. Okay, I replied simply. Okay, what? Stella demanded. But something flickered in her eyes. Uncertainty, perhaps. If that's how you both feel, okay? I strolled upstairs to our bedroom and took out my old duffel bag. I could hear them whispering downstairs, but no one came up while I gathered enough clothes for a few days. I saw that my hands were not shaking. I felt strangely relaxed. Stella had already left, most likely to her room, when I arrived. Delilah stood at the kitchen doorway, arms crossed. So you're just leaving? That's your solution? You said you'd be better off, I responded, looking for my keys and wallet. I'm respecting that. That's not, I didn't mean. She paused. Pride, wrath, or something else kept her from saying what she wanted to say. I took up my purse. I'll be at Ryan's. I'll figure out something more permanent soon. I hesitated at the doorway. You know, when Stella said those things before, it hurt. But hearing you agree? That broke something, Del. I drove to Ryan's apartment in solitude. He looked at me and immediately set up his guest room. That's the type of friend he is. I turned off my phone and took a sleeping pill from my emergency travel box. This morning, I awoke to find sunlight flowing through unfamiliar drapes. When I eventually turned on my phone, it was filled with notifications. 13 missed calls, 8 from Delilah, 3 from Stella, and 2 from Quinn, my sister. 27 text messages, 4 voicemails, I have not listened to them yet. I'm sitting in Ryan's guest room, watching the morning traffic below, and thinking about the empty places in our family portraits. Maybe they were always there, but I didn't want to see them. My phone vibrates again. It's Stella. After everything that has transpired, I find myself staring at her name on the screen, wondering what is so necessary right now. But I am not ready. Not yet. Walking away isn't always the hardest part, it's deciding whether to walk back. Update 1. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who left positive comments on my previous post. I did not expect such a large response. To answer the most common questions, yes, I have read the messages. No, I have not responded to any of them yet. And yes, I am still at Ryan's. This morning began like the others, me pretending to focus on work while glancing at my phone, debating if I should break the stillness. Then Ryan dropped a bomb during breakfast. Miles is back in town, he announced, sliding his phone across the table. On Facebook, there was a photo of Stella's biological father posted at a local restaurant. 2 weeks ago? The same Miles who hasn't paid child support for 3 years. The same Miles who had missed Stella's last 4 birthdays. Suddenly, everything made sense. I scrolled through my messages again. Delilah's communications have evolved, from angry to, very mature, Thomas. Instead of talking, run away. To the concerned, please let us know you're fine. To something more complicated, her most recent read, there's something you need to know. It's Stella, please call. Quinn arrived about lunchtime, ready with coffee and that no-nonsense expression she gives when she's about to meddle in my affairs. You look like hell, she said, sliding into Ryan's couch. Thanks. Always good to see you too, sis. She did not smile. I ran into Stella at the mall yesterday. That caught my interest. How is she? Meeting Miles. For coffee? She didn't see me, Quinn said, observing my reaction closely. She looked hopeful. You know that look she gets, like when she's trying not to get too excited about something? I understood exactly what she meant. It's the same expression Stella had when she was accepted to the summer camp last year, as if she was terrified to believe something good was happening. Did you know he's been messaging her for months? Quinn asked. Promising to make things right this time? My stomach turned. I checked Stella's Instagram, which I rarely do. Her most recent post was a snapshot of her and Miles. Caption. Real family time. Her friends' replies were loaded with heart emoticons, and none of them were aware of the background. Ryan, who had been quietly listening, eventually piped up. Remember what happened last time he showed up? Stella was 13. I remembered. Miles had arrived with huge promises, stayed for 2 weeks, and then vanished again. Stella remained in bed for several days afterward. Delilah and I spent months regaining her trust and assuring her that she was enough. That she deserved more. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a text message from Delilah. He's asking her to move in with him. She's actually considering it. Please, Thomas. I know you're angry with me, but she needs you. I began typing multiple responses. I deleted them all. What could I possibly say? Sorry, you told me to disappear, but now you need me to reappear? The entire event seemed like a terrible joke. Then followed another notification. Stella's latest Instagram post, a photo of college brochures scattered across her bed. The headline reads, "Big change is coming. Sometimes you have to choose your real path." Miles said those precise words 3 years ago, right before he traveled across the country to pursue his true passion and stopped returning Stella's calls. Quinn must have noticed something on my face. "What are you thinking?" I glanced at my phone, reading Delilah's message. Then I quietly said, "I'm thinking about the day I married Delilah. Remember what Stella said in her speech? How sometimes family finds you when you're not looking for it." Quinn nodded. "And now," I sighed. "Now she's posting about her real family and her real path while Miles plays Father of the Year. He's got her convinced." My phone began to ring, and I came to a stop. Unknown number. "Thomas, this is Miss Anderson from Riverside High. I'm Stella's guidance counselor. I know this is unusual, but I need to speak with you about some concerning changes in Stella's academic plans and recent behavior. Would you be able to come in tomorrow morning?" I consented to the meeting, my thoughts racing. Stella had maintained straight A's since freshman year, anxious to attend a good institution. What might have changed? Quinn and Ryan both looked at me expectantly as I hung up. "So?" Quinn asked. "I think it's time to stop being silent." I took up my phone and eventually opened Stella's voicemail. Her voice was low, unlike her normal assurance. "I know you probably hate me now, and I get it. I need to tell you something. About why I said those things. About Miles. Please call me back." Something in her voice reminded me of the 13-year-old girl who would check the mailbox every day, hoping for a letter that never arrived. I have a meeting with the guidance counselor tomorrow at 9 o'clock. After that, I believe it is time for some honest conversations. Because disappearing occasionally allows you to view things more clearly from a distance. The school's number is still shown on my screen. Next to it is a text notification from Miles to our family group chat, which I am still a part of. Great news! Big announcement at dinner tomorrow night. I have a feeling I know what the announcement will be. And I will not let history repeat itself. Update 2. I spent the last hour figuring out how to write this update. The meeting with Miss Anderson showed something I had not expected. And what happened next? Well, let me start at the beginning. I arrived at Riverside High early and observed students rushing to the first period. A couple of Stella's classmates knew me, and their quick glances and murmurs informed me that stories about my absence had already circulated. Miss Anderson did not waste time after I sat down. "Stella submitted paperwork to withdraw from her advanced placement classes yesterday," she explained, sliding a form across her desk. "She's also dropping out of the French club and student council." When I asked why, she said she's transferring schools next semester. My chest tightened. Stella battled hard to get into these programs. She had been counting on extracurricular activities to help her college applications. "There's more," Miss Anderson added. "Last week, she asked me to send her transcripts to 3 different schools. All in California." She halted and attentively observed me. "The same city where Miles recently purchased property." That's when things started falling into place. I brought out my phone and showed her Miles' huge announcement text. "Let me guess. He's opening a new business out there." She nodded. Stella mentioned something about a startup. Said her father needs family investors to get it off the ground. The usual, nauseous feeling returned. The same one I received 3 years ago, when Miles persuaded Delilah to lend him money for a sure-thing business endeavor. We never saw the money again. I left the school and drove directly to our house. Delilah's automobile was in the driveway. I could see her pacing in the kitchen with a phone to her ear. She saw me and ran to answer the door before I could knock. "He asked her for money," she replied promptly. "Her college fund. He's been filling her head with promises about this tech startup. Saying that if she invests now, she'll make enough to pay for any college she wants." "Where is she?" "Coffee with Miles." Again. Delilah's voice broke. I tried telling her it's a scam, but she accused me of being jealous, that he's finally stepping up. She said at least he believes in her dreams. I sat down at the kitchen counter, the identical location where everything collapsed a week ago. "Why didn't you tell me he was back?" I tried to handle it myself. She exhaled. "I wondered if I could keep them apart." She shook her head. "Then you and Stella got into an argument and she said terrible things, and I just panicked. I sided with her because I was terrified not to. She'd go all in for him. Before I could react, the front door opened. Stella walked in. She froze when she saw me. She looked different. Makeup applied carefully. Stella was dressed in an expensive jacket Miles had most likely purchased for her. But her eyes were crimson. "What are you doing here?" she asked. However, her voice lacked its typical sharpness. "Are you dropping your AP courses? Really?" I kept my tone gentle. "What happened to Stanford?" "Plans change," she murmured, avoiding my gaze. "Dad says—" "Miles says," I said gently. Something flickered on her face. "He has connections out there. The startup is guaranteed to." As if the classic car dealership were guaranteed? Or a food truck franchise? I took out my laptop and opened the documents that I had spent the morning gathering. I did some digging. Want to know Miles' current company registration status, or his credit report? Or about the 3 ongoing cases from his previous guaranteed investment opportunity? Stella's hands trembled as she grabbed the laptop. With each click and document, the careful facade cracked a little more. When she reached the lawsuit filed by his prior stepdaughter's grandmother to collect college funds he had borrowed, the first tear flowed. "He said—" She swallowed hard. "He said he had changed. He wants to make up for lost time. That we could be a true family if—" She paused and looked up at me. "A photo album. He stated I needed to prove I was choosing him. That you were the reason he remained away. You took his place." "Oh, sweetie," Delilah approached, but Stella stepped back. "I knew," she said quietly. "I guess I knew. But I desperately wanted to believe." Her phone vibrated. Miles sent another SMS. She stared at it for a long time before shutting it off entirely. "I have to go," she murmured quickly, rushing for the stairs. I need to think." We let her leave. Sometimes the most generous thing you can do is provide space. Hours have passed. Delilah and I talked, truly talked, for the first time in weeks. Regarding worries and blunders. About Stella, Miles. About us. Around midnight, I was preparing to return to Ryan's when my phone lit up with a text from Stella. "I messed up. Everything's messed up. Can we talk? I mean, really talk? Not about Miles or money or anything, just, remember when we used to have ice cream after my dancing classes and you'd let me rant about school drama? Could we do that? I know I don't deserve it, but I'm composing this from my car, which is parked outside our local ice cream shop. It's supposedly closed, but the owner recognizes us. We have been coming here for 3 years. He is staying open late just for us. Stella just arrived in her mother's automobile. She's sitting there, probably gathering up the nerve to enter. Exactly as I am. Sometimes the most difficult conversations begin with the slightest steps. Or, in this case, mint chocolate chip ice cream at midnight. Final update. That night in the ice cream shop altered everything. Stella spoke for hours. About Miles' manipulation. Her anxieties and guilt. But it was something she said in passing that piqued my interest. Miles had asked Jessica to get her friend's parents to invest in his firm as well. Something clicked. I remembered the lawsuits I'd discovered, a pattern of targeting families through their children. The rage I'd been hiding now had a purpose. "You know," I explained carefully. "What he's doing isn't simply ethically wrong. It is illegal." Stella glanced up from her melting ice cream. "What do you mean?" I described securities fraud and unlawful investment techniques. Her eyes widened as she took out her phone and showed me the group conversations where Miles was directly soliciting investments from children. That night, after sending Stella off, I made some phone calls. Quinn has a friend in the SEC. Ryan knows someone in the district attorney's office. By the morning, I had a plan. Miles didn't see it coming. He was too preoccupied with his big announcement dinner, where he intended to persuade Stella to hand over her education fund. He had also invited the parents of some of her friends, adding to the list of prospective targets. The dinner was held at an expensive restaurant. Miles was in his element, discussing Silicon Valley connections and assured profits. I waited for the appetizers to arrive before rising up. "Before we continue," I said, "there are some people who'd like to join us." On cue, 2 federal agents and a state investigator entered. Miles' face changed from confident to confused, to terrified, in seconds. Miles was operating more than one fraud, it seems out. The detectives discovered 7 different fraudulent schemes in 3 jurisdictions. Every time he reconnected with Stella over the years, he would set up new victims. The classic automobile dealership that cost Delilah her funds was part of a broader scam scheme. The food truck franchise follows the same pattern. But here's the beautiful part. He'd gotten sloppy this time. He had documented everything in texts and emails to Stella, believing she would never turn against him. When she forwarded the messages to the investigators, his fate was sealed. Are the parents present at the dinner? They wore wires. Every promise, lie, and illegal investment pitch was recorded. Miles tried to run, knocking over a waiter before sprinting for the door. He took 3 steps before being stopped by security. As they led him away, he gave Stella that manipulative puppy dog expression that she had fallen for so many times. This is all a misunderstanding, sweetie. Tell them. I am your father. Stella stood up, shoulders straight. My father's right here, she said, taking my hand. And he just watched you get exactly what you deserve. The aftermath was intense. News coverage, victim statements, more families are coming forward. The investigators discovered over $2.3 million in stolen funds. Miles estimates 15 to 20 years. His startup consisted solely of a website and some stolen photos of a real tech company's office. But the true victory was not witnessing Miles' arrest. It was the brief moments that followed. Stella placed all of her photos with Miles in a box and donated them to the prosecution. Evidence, she said, with a hint of her old smile. She reapplied to her AP courses. In light of the circumstances, the school was understanding. Instead of being angry, her friends' parents formed a support group for families impacted by similar scams. Something good came from something bad. Stella asked me last night for help with her college essays. I have a pretty unique story now, she explained. How many people can write about bringing down their biological father's fraudulent empire? Delilah and I are in counseling. There is trust to rebuild and wounds to heal. But watching her meticulously place my photos back in the family albums and straighten each one, that expressed more than words could. Stella came down early this morning for breakfast. She carried an envelope with her. I found this in my room, she explained, passing it across the table. Miles asked me to send it last week. It is investment documentation for his startup. I figured you would want to add it to the evidence file. I stared at the envelope, then at her. Do you want to deliver it to the investigators together? She grinned, the genuine, unrestrained smile I had missed. Can we get ice cream afterwards? Some may argue that the vengeance was excessively severe. Whatever happens, that family is still family. However, a real family does not strive to take your future. A real family will protect you. Even if it means shielding you from other relatives. Miles' sentencing date is next month. Stella plans to read a victim impact statement. She spent weeks working on it, painstakingly rewriting each word. She requested me to review it yesterday. It needs a good ending, she went on. Something that shows I'm not just his victim anymore. I believe she's already found that ending. It's in the way she holds her head up right now. In how she assists other children in identifying similar schemes. In the college brochures on her desk. Her actual route. Not the one Miles attempted to sell her. Moving on sometimes entails ensuring that the past does not harm others. And sometimes, the finest retribution isn't simply watching someone face consequences, it is thriving despite them. We are having a family meal tonight. Only the 3 of us. Stella's making her famous pasta sauce, which she learnt while watching cooking videos with me during lockdown. Normal, boring, and wonderful. Things related to the family. Miles will have plenty of time to ponder about these things from his cell. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.